Hello guys. I hope you enjoyed your lunch. And a question right at the beginning. Who of you knows Linuxfabrik? Okay. Okay, impressive. And who uses the Linuxfabrik monitoring plugins right now? Oh, quite a few. I think more than last time. Perfect. Thank you. Let me introduce myself. My name is Markus Frei. I founded the Linuxfabrik company together with my colleague Sandro Lang in 2016. And we are an IT service provider for Linux and a wide range of open source applications. We install, maintain, and support Linux-based infrastructures, on-premise or cloud-based. And if you're interested in getting professional business support for any open source applications, go to our website and have a look at our solutions and references online. Today I'm here to talk about the current state of our Linuxfabrik monitoring plugins. So now, what's the state? We've written a check plugin to check the state of our check plugins. And the current state of Linuxfabrik monitoring plugins says actually everything is okay. So, presentation is finished. Thanks for your attention. Thanks for listening. Okay, just kidding, of course. Of course, I have an agenda. I want to start with a short introduction to our plugins and want to tell you what's new in the checks, what's new about the fork of the Icinga Director we have, what's new about Grafana, tell you something about packages, want to share some technical insights, and we'll talk about the community. So let's start. Let's start with the introduction. This is our GitHub account, and there you see highlighted the monitoring plugins and the corresponding libs, the libraries for them. As I told you, as I said, we host and support infrastructures and applications. And to do this in a professional way and on a professional level, we use Icinga. But we also needed platform-independent and enterprise-level monitoring plugins. And for me, monitoring plugins are the building blocks of every monitoring system. And Nagios plugins and all other didn't fit very well for various reasons. So we started to build them ourselves a few years ago. And at the last Icinga camp last year, I went into more detail about the overall motivation. Now, what's important for you is every plugin, even those sponsored by our customers, is pure open source and is even public domain thanks to the unlicensed license model. Most of them are self-configuring and use best practice defaults so that they run without parameters wherever possible. Most of them are platform independent, although developed with a minimal Linux in mind. They all execute fast and use as few system resources as possible because we have a limited runtime for plugins and we don't want to stress the infrastructure with monitoring services. I can actually say all plugins are widely accepted and used at large scale by ourselves, by our customers, and by many admins around the world. And in addition to the check plugins, we also provide very detailed documentation, notification plugins, for example, mail, Rocket Chat notification, Telegram, and so on, event plugins, plugin icons for your Icinga Web 2 or for Nagios, etc., Icinga Director basket configurations, and Grafana dashboards. So everything out of the box. Some of you may know this slide. It's a bit older slide showing some of our monitoring plugins on an Icinga server in action. And this is just a subset because all of them do not fit on a slide any longer. And important, every check plugin does one thing and does it well, Linux mantra. We support atomic monitoring. because it is pretty much useful when it comes to check intervals, alerting, or aggregating results like in the business process module, for example. And that's the reason why in the current release you find, for example, 26 dedicated MySQL plugins for checking different important aspects of MariaDB, or 11 UI Dorado storage plugins, 9 Wildfly JBoss plugins, and so on. And together with a lot of individual plugins, we offer nearly 200 plugins in total as of today. All plugins report as precisely as possible with the most important information first. On this slide, you see Redis status. Redis is a very important component, even in Icinga DB. Redis status is a plugin that returns information and statistics about a Redis server. And a lot of those plugins do far even more than this, like this one. They try to help you as good as they can, as you can see on this slide. And this is very special about many of our plugins. Not only they provide consistent information, but also try to give you tips for troubleshooting where possible, because we need that for ourselves too. I think you got an idea about our plugins. Let's finish the introduction and move on to the next topic. I want to talk about what's new and what's changed in the plugins since the last Icinga camp. As always, we have new plugins in town, and let me name just a few. First one, GitHub Status, checks the GitHub status page, as its name says, for those of you who depend on GitHub, like me. We have several new journal D plugins. They query the systemd journal and alert on any events found, or they check the current disk usage of all journal files of the systemd journal. Network I/O is back. Network I/O checks the network throughput over a period of time, just like disk I/O does with disks. OpenStack SwiftStat is a plugin that displays and checks information for a Swift account and its depending Swift containers. And there are several new Restic plugins. Restic is a backup tool. And these plugins check backup repositories for errors, the age of snapshots, and report some statistics. And all new application version plugins are now unified and don't need an internet connection any longer to check for a new version. And even they are more relaxed. They warn if a package is end of life and not if there is a newer version available. That's important. We have two new Swiss Army knife plugins. Swiss Army knife plugins are plugins that can universally check a wide variety of backend systems. And one is by SSH. It's new and is quite a good replacement for the check by SSH plugin from the Nagios monitoring plugins project. It uses SSH to execute a command on the remote host, returns standard out, standard error, and the command's return code. And with this information and with pattern matching on standard out, the plugin can alert with selectable severities. CSV values imports comma-separated data from various sources to a local SQLite database and can then run queries on it. The result can be checked against a range expression, for example, the number of items found, or a specific number resulting from a query. So compared to the Nagios plugins, check HTTP is the only one left or missing that is of business interest and is not ported to our plugins yet. Of course, we have worked on existing plugins. We have updates there. For example, Disk I/O now also reports the top 3 processes causing most of the I/O. And disk usage now also likes clear text and absolute parameter values, like ones on this slide here, 80% used or 3 GB free. All MySQL checks or plugins don't need username password no more. That's also important. Instead, they use option file authentication, like all MySQL clients do. And the Windows Service Check is rewritten and now able to check multiple Windows services on a host. It supports Python regular expressions and threshold ranges. This is one of our most famous plugins, About Me. About Me was rewritten from scratch in this release. It's a plugin that actually checks nothing, but provides inventory and security-related information. I have arranged some parts of its output on one page so that you have an idea of what the plugin is capable of. The goal is to support you in debugging a machine in relation to other alerts that may have popped up. And the plugin is also great for getting a quick overview of an unknown machine, or even assists you in auditing. Time to say thank you for some contributions. Time to say thanks to the community. Thank you, Dominik. Thank you, Dominik from Universitätsspital Basel, for supporting the project and contributing some special plugins, or contributing code that inspired us to new plugins. Comet System is a plugin that targets JSON endpoints of sensor hardware. SafeNet HSM State checks the current state of hardware security modules by Gemalto SafeNet via SSH. And by the way, an unfinished code fragment inspired us to write the new by SSH plugin. Thank you, Dominik. Diacos, the plugin logs into this very specific hospitality invoicing system, does a search, does a query in that system, measures the performance and reports availability. And for this release, there are currently some pull requests waiting in our pipeline. For example, a plugin to check a GitLab server, which is actually a shell script, so it doesn't fit, but which we will port to Python and adapt it to our coding standards. So happy to get pull requests. News about the fork of the Icinga Director, of our fork. We manage the Icinga Director configuration of all of our customers using the configuration basket extend import functionality. The Director basket matched items by name, which meant it was impossible to rename existing items. Instead, renaming created a new item. And this is why we forked the Icinga Director and introduced the concepts of UUIDs a few years ago. Fortunately, Thomas Gelf visited us in Zurich, Thomas Gelf from Icinga. So together we integrated most of our changes into the official main branch of the Icinga Director, but not all. We are still missing one feature please, that we need for our deployments: automatic renaming of applied custom variables. Once this is done, this will be the last release of our fork, I promise. Until then, our updated fork is available and derived actually from version 1.10.2. Let's talk about our predefined Icinga Director baskets. We added new service sets for Debian 11 and Ubuntu 22. We added service sets for 8, for Free IPA, for Graph, and many more applications. We also improved existing ones. For example, we enhanced all service sets checking for a systemd service by a related journald query with the new plugin. And all Linux OS service sets contain now the debug shell service, which helps you detecting if any user with console access can obtain unrestricted root access to the system. So very important. All MySQL plugins are now spread across multiple service sets. For example, we provide now a new schema service set that can be completely disabled if an administrator can't do anything about bad schema design. So the service sets and the Icinga Director configuration is constantly improving and gives you changes with big effects. And for today, if you assign the rel8 tag to a new host, you will get around about 40 checks out of the box due to the Icinga Director configuration. Next topic is Grafana. For Grafana, we have rewritten all dashboards and panels from scratch. Dashboards are now defined in JSONnet, which is actually a YAML in Grafana, and we're using the newest Grafana version and panel versions. All definitions are deployed using Grizzly. Grizzly is a Grafana tool, a command line tool talking to the Grafana API. What you see here on this slide is CPU usage, as an example. CPU usage returns a bunch of numbers representing the current system-wide CPU utilization. And what you see here, what I highlighted there is all tables which we had separate panels for are now integrated into the panels with first, min, mean, max, and last columns. And the same slide, but highlighted over there. To give you a better overview, many panels like this one do not draw all time series value per default any longer. In this example, guest CPU usage is switched off, but can be enabled with a single click. And this greatly improves readability of all of the panels, not plugins, panels. This is disk usage in action. Disk usage, the plugin measures the usage of all mounted disk partitions on physical disks. And some panels like this one make use of Grafana transformations to relabel the performance data. And what you see here is PHP status. One of the tasks of this plugin is to check PHP for startup errors, missing modules, or misconfigured directives. And interestingly, it returns the status of these errors as perf data. So we get as performance data 0 for OK for PHP config errors, or a warning, a 1 if it's not. And in panels of this type, we use Grafana overrides to visualize the state of each of these PHP errors over time in clear text. The updated panels help visualize the version history of your applications. For example, this one, PHP version, showing that the customer started first with PHP version 7.4.30, then made 2 minor updates, and stayed with 7.4.33 for a couple of months in the chosen time frame. And beside that, on top, the check is warning about end of life for 7.4, so now it's time to interact with the customer. I think that's enough news for now. The complete list of changes can be found in our very detailed changelog file on GitHub. Let's switch to Python and packaging. A question that is often asked is, do I really need Python to run the plugins? And the new answer is no, not at all if you don't want to. And that's new. We provided compiled versions for Windows since long, but not for Linux. And that changed right after the last Icinga camp. So you only need Python if you want to run them from source for any reason, simple as that. Of course, this means that there are now more ways to install the plugins. And if we have the source point of view on repo.linuxfabrik.ch, you find RPM Debian packages which deploy the compiled plugins. So no Python is needed on the target host. And this is the recommended way. If you don't want to use your package manager, or you can't use your package manager, or you use any other Linux-like or Unix-like OS like Raspbian, VMware Photon, macOS, and so on, you can download the compiled plugins from the tar or zip archive. And if you're on Windows, nothing changed. You can also use the compiled plugins as usual. Or you can install Python on any platform and run them in the source code variant from GitHub. So they run nearly everywhere. Have a look at the install document on GitHub for further details. Robert? Okay, just wait.
Okay, again, the packages for which architectures are they available? AMD 64 and ARM?
No, just Intel
so
64-bit.
Okay,
yeah.
yeah.
But we have some community activities around this stuff. Who of you? Yeah, you. These guys build Docker containers that build the plugins, and maybe you can do something for ARM and so on. Yeah. Okay, let's get more technical and jump to the next topic. I want to share some design principles and technical insights. Originally, the current plugins evolved from Python 2. And then Python 2 and Python 3 variants were maintained in parallel for quite some time. But at the end of 22, we stopped the Python 2 development. For the current release, all Python 2 plugins and fragments have been removed from the project completely. And if you have a look at the constructive cost model, COCOMO, for estimating effort, cost, and schedule for software projects, we now have around about 37,000 physical lines of Python 3 code, resulting in nearly 9 person-years or $1.2 million development effort and costs. All I want to say is that the plugins are in a very mature state. How does the checks actually look like under the hood? Although we have a variety of plugins and even huge ones like About Me with its 2,200 lines of source code, they are all structured the same way. At the top, you find or you see the plugin by SSH, and at the bottom, the plugin Apache HTTPD status. I rotated them 90 degrees to fit the source code on the screen, so you have to read them like this, from left to right. Okay, let's deep dive. Every plugin starts with the header definition. The header definition contains importing modules, defining constants, defining license, and so on. And the second part is parameter definition, and can be quite different per plugin, as you can see here. All checks start by parsing the command line and then exit with the state unknown if this fails. Then they fetch data in various ways, for example, by file, by HTTP, by Samba, whatever. Then initialize some variables and analyze the fetched data. After that, the message is built, performance data is built, and every plugin exits with the library function over and out, OAO. And by the way, our Python libraries, which is a separate project because we need them in other projects too, they do the heavy work so that the plugins are always extensible. And on the next slide, I hope it will work, I put that all together. I'm going to show you 30 months of development time compressed to 40 seconds. Okay, seems to work. On the left, you'll see the Git visualization of the monitoring plugins. On the right, the same for the Python libraries. And it visualizes pretty much the dynamics of both projects, the agile approach of the plugins and the stability of the libs. And it also visualizes the community activity behind that. And what you see here, the white balloon, these are the checked plugins surrounded by their unit tests. The green ones over there is, for example, the SNMP plugin and its MIPS. This fork here down there is the disk smart example files and so on. It's done with Gauss. Gauss is a tool for that. It's beautiful. I love it. You can do this with the kernel, for the Linux kernel, for example too. It's great. Community, the next topic. As some of you may know, in the beginning, the project was located on our self-hosted GitLab server for around about 2 years, with nearly zero community activity. On 1st of March 22, we moved from GitLab to GitHub. Since then, the stargazers constantly increased, and some peaks here are thanks to main events like blog posts on Icinga.com or the last Icinga camp. If you prefer a slightly different way of presentation for the numbers, use the monitoring plugins game card from our open source quartet. For those who haven't got any game yet, we still have some in our online shop available. We are listed on exchange-icinga.com. So if you use the plugin, please rate them, please share experiences, and please give feedback to help other users. And we are always happy about feedback. We are always happy about issues or pull requests. And if you like the project, please consider sponsoring by GitHub sponsors, by PayPal, or even better, by concluding a service contract and getting professional Linux support. No matter what, star them on GitHub, please. This also helps improve the Quartet game card. And please spread the word. So, summary, what was new? We had 2 releases since my last talk with new and improved checks. We have a new Icinga Director fork version, hopefully the last one. New Grafana dashboards written in JSONNet, deployable by Grizzly. Have a look at that. And RPM and Debian packages. Much more in the changelog of the project. This is my last slide. As always, there's much more to talk about, but time is over, I guess. And thanks for your attention, and thanks for listening.
We do have a little bit of time. If you have any questions for Markus and his talk. Everything clear, seems.
Perfect.
Oh, there's someone.
Thank you, Markus, for your talk. That might be a little bit off topic, but I forgot to ask you at lunch, what about the icons you provide on your project? Are they to import to the Icinga instances?
Are they ported to what?
The icons you provide at your GitHub page, what would they be used for?
You can find the icons on our download server. We removed them from GitHub for reasons of size reasons, and they cluttered up the Git history. So they are not on GitHub any longer, but on our download server in a separate zip archive.
Thank you.
Do you plan any Linux distribution-based software repository, like for Ubuntu, to have a separate PPR archive?
Our we have on repo Linuxfabrik CH, we have repositories for Debian, Ubuntu, and
Oh,
RHEL.
it's separate repositories. So
There are
for-
separate repositories and for separated versions. So
okay.
RHEL 7, 8, 9, Ubuntu 22, 20, and so on. Yeah.
Sorry, it was not too clear from the
Yeah,
slide.
no problem. They are all separated, yeah.
All right. I think everything is clear. If you want to know anything else, Markus will be around, of course, for the rest of the day. It's really impressive to see how much effort Linuxfabrik puts into those plugins, so make sure to try them out. And thanks again, Markus, for sharing this.
Yep. Thank you.